everybody. How's it going? What are you doing? I'm Eve Sturgis, and I'm just over here hosting the podcast, Everything's Relative, like I do. I love to talk to people about their DNA discoveries, and I think it's a really good idea for us to be documenting this time in history. And when I say this time in history, I mean this time when technology has made DNA more available than ever before, more quick, more easy, more cheap, which is exposing more secrets than ever before, which is changing lives like no one could have predicted. So that's what we're doing over here. Hey, I said last week that this week's episode was going to be another heavy one, another deep dive into some dark territory, which is a reality of the NPE community. It really is. But I have changed my mind, partly because I felt like we could use a break, partly because I actually want a little more time to edit that particular heavy episode, and partly because I have the stomach flu and I need an easy week. So thank you for your flexibility, listeners. There are no trigger warnings this episode. I am instead going to introduce you to Mendy. He is a righteous dude who was kind enough to give me his Friday afternoon last week. Thanks for listening. This is Everything's Relative.
Yeah, of course, I know Eagle Rock. You guys have, there's a great pizza place there.
Casabianca?
Yes.
It's a good world. Pizza. Yeah, totally. So tell me what's going on with you? Tell me what happened?
What happened? Well, COVID happened, and it happened for everybody. But I think probably the best is starting about where as a childhood. So I was born in Connecticut in the 1980s, which was a great time to grow up in Connecticut. Like, it was the East Coast and just the music, everything. I love everything 80s. I had a pretty privileged childhood. I grew up in a somewhat wealthy home, upper middle class. So I was at the summer camps and everything. And it was a Jewish upbringing, but more culturally. We would go on the high holidays to synagogue, but on Yom Kippur, I would have a bacon double cheeseburger in the afternoon.
Got it. Yeah.
So we were culturally Jewish, and that's because my dad was Jewish growing up, and Judaism was very important to his mom. So my mother converted when I was a child from Christianity. So it was a very nice, all our friends, I had an older brother. He was about 19 months ahead of me. And I had a really nice upbringing. I was always the different one. I was always kind of the entertainer. I was always the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, black sheep, so to speak, of the family. I definitely felt it in a way. My dad always was, more leaning towards my older brother. Now, my dad had been married before my mom, but she was unable to conceive children. So they adopted 3 kids, which is, he had a whole life before. I mean, when they met, he was like 50, 51 or something like that. And my mom was like 26. So I know, right? But he had, the 3 kids from before, and then me and my older brother. We grew up, as siblings. We didn't know, I mean, we maybe knew that they were adopted, but we never went into it. I always saw them as my brothers and sisters. But they always saw us differently because they knew they were adopted. And since they've gone and found their birth families and engaged with that, but they've always knew they were adopted. We never really knew. So, they always looked at us like we were kind of like, the purebreds, so to speak, right? And it was a source of contention between them and us. They always called us the favorites, which I always would say to them, I definitely am not the favorite, right? My older brother's the favorite. But I definitely felt that there was something different about me than my older brother. My father always said in his later life that his work was his mistress. So he was one of those guys who would work till like, would leave the house at 7, had his own business, would come back 8, 9 o'clock at night, go behind a newspaper, and we would try to play with him, and he just would, wasn't really there. But he was always there for my brother playing. We always kind of connected with one thing, and that was sports.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 6, my parents got divorced. And at about the age of 7, my mom started dating another man, and my dad was off frolicking with pretty much every young woman he could locate or convince to go out with him. He was quite a ladies' man, so I wasn't surprised. But I would still, we would go on the weekends or every other weekend with my dad, and a lot of times, I would find myself hanging out with my dad's girlfriend or whoever at the time, and my dad and my brother would go off and do stuff together, right? And I never thought anything of it. I thought that I was just, following in his footsteps as a ladies' man or something that, these people, they wanted to spend time with me. They found me quite charming, which
right.
I can't blame them, but definitely it's something that, stands out, especially now in retrospect.
Of course.
He and I never really connected, my dad and I. We connected later in life. I always felt I was trying to earn his approval all throughout life, throughout high school, and even in the university, even after university, working with him for a period of time. I always was trying to earn his approval. And then at one point in time in my life, maybe 10 years ago, I said, I've achieved a lot in my life as is. I don't need his approval. And that's when the kind of, I guess, the power dynamic changed between me and him. And then we started connecting more. And we started, he started like learning and respecting who I am as a human being, and why later in life I started to get closer to Judaism, why I married who I married, why I put, my personal faith above personal profit. Mm-hmm. Right. That was always something, I was very difficult for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, sure. So I grew up, we lived with my mom and my stepdad. We moved to a different country, and we came, whenever my dad would have us come for a weekend, he would fly us. He would pay for my brother's ticket, but not mine. My mom would always pay for my ticket.
Whoa. Did you know that at the time?
I found this out later. Right. I found this out later.
Wow.
I was a kid. It was, and that's something that's kind of like, okay, like, I think the argument was, oh, well, we're doing this half, right?
Sure.
We're going Dutch, so to speak. But like, I was always the one that wasn't getting paid for. So, now looking back, once again, like, it makes me think maybe he knew. Like, I don't know. Fast forward to COVID-19, right? COVID struck everyone differently. I ended up being furloughed and staying home and being a home teacher to my kids, which I completely failed at. I think they definitely regressed to a level that was unseen before. But my wife was a teacher, so she was continuing teaching during this time. All the stories were coming out about COVID and, pre-existing conditions and, different things with your DNA. I was just following it very closely because I've always had an interest in my family's history. My mom's side, you could trace it back. We're daughters of the Revolution, all the way back to the Mayflower. My dad's side, he always, we're from Eastern Europe. That was the saying. We're from Eastern Europe. You want to know? Go figure it out yourself. I don't have time for it. I want to make money. That was kind of like, that's literally my upbringing in a nutshell. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do, I'm going to do the 23andMe with the health stuff. Maybe it could provide some insight into, predisposition to a pre-existing condition. I don't know. I just, I think everyone bought a lot of things online during COVID that they may look back and regret now. And I definitely, for the first time in my life, had my credit card number stolen probably 3 times.
Oh my gosh!
All within the first couple of months. So it was mayhem. So I did it, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. What's the harm? I get the tube, right? My wife thinks I'm totally Meshuggah, saying like, what are you doing? Like, why are you wasting your time? And I said, I'm going to do it anyway. I sat in the thing, and the only time I stepped into like an enclosed space during COVID, not even to the grocery store, was to mail that back to 23andMe. Then I get, so I download the app. I do all the connecting of, this was my thing. And I get a notification, your results are in a couple months later or a month later. And my wife's teaching upstairs. And so I'm like, oh, awesome. She wanted to see the results with me. So I run upstairs, and she's on her Zoom classroom with 7-year-olds, and I come running in. I'm like, I got the results. She said, be quiet. I'm teaching, but I'm almost done. So just wait 5 minutes. So I said, okay, fine. So I go downstairs, and I'm waiting. She comes downstairs. She goes, okay, let's open it up, and we open it up, and it's a very expected what I expected. 50% was, or 45% was German, French, British, Irish, whatever. That's all, Mayflowerish.
Right.
Exactly. And then it said 55% Italian. And I was like, she's my mom. She's my dad. Only this guy would run around saying he's from Eastern Europe and not realize he's Italian. And but no Ashkenazi Jew, none of that stuff, right? And so I said to my wife, I said, he's running around telling everyone he's from Eastern Europe. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I noticed the DNA relatives tab. Mm-hmm. So I click it. I expect to see 5th cousin, 6th cousins on my mom's side, something like this. I see half sister. And it's definitely not anyone I know.
Wow.
It was like a slap in the face, and then freezing cold water, and then another slap, and then my wife hitting me, being like, what, can you believe what's going on?
Just like, you see what I see?
Exactly. And we were both in this kind of like total state of shock. She couldn't even, like, she wanted to be there, like to be like, are you okay? But she herself was shocked, right? So like the two of us together are just sitting there, and our kids on the other hand are in the room on the other side of the room, yelling, calling us. Right.
Like life is still going on.
Oh yeah, it's going a mile a minute. I can't keep up. So I'm like taking my few minutes and trying to capture my breath, and then my wife's like, I have to go back to teach. Like I have to go back to class. So she goes back upstairs, and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'll get there, right? Like I'm old enough that I could try to figure, I just need my time to figure and process. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at all these, and I don't recognize a single name of anybody in the top 10, 15 of this thing. I'm like, this is crazy. Maybe they screwed up, right? Maybe they screwed up. Just like, this part you could write in a book for anyone who's found out any MPE, NPE, anything. This is like the one thing we all think that, well, you know what? It's got to be the fault of 23andMe. It's their fault. You know what I mean?
Mistakes happen. Mistakes happen in life. Like things like technology, things mess up. Everybody has had an experience of something getting it wrong. So why not 23andMe?
Exactly. And maybe when I spat in it, right? Someone else, maybe the guy at the post office, because it's COVID and all, right? He might as well open it up and spit in it himself. Like, who knows? Your mind, your mind just goes anywhere.
That would be so gross. Sorry.
Oh, of course, especially like literally, this is in the heart of like the COVID. This is like but your mind goes there because you just don't want to understand or expect or believe what you're seeing on this website, and then you start thinking maybe this is like another one of my credit cards being screwed or taken advantage of. So, I mean, the first thing I do is I pick up the phone and I call my mom.
All right.
And I said to her, I said, you know, and so I'm trying to frame it like, you know, like, I'm not just going to come out and throw it in her face, but
did you already suspect?
I had never suspected anything.
But I mean, so when you're looking at when you called your mom, had you already been thinking, oh, maybe I have a different dad? Or were you just still thinking, did you know that dad thought he was from Eastern Europe and he's Italian?
I think that, yeah, the second. That's more kind of where I was going. I was kind of, I was buying into the rose-colored glasses way of looking at it, of like, you know, oh, this is totally just a mistake, you know, but maybe this ancestry part is okay or whatever. Then I, you know, I call her and answers. She says, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. You know, Dad is such a funny guy. And she tells me, what did he do now? Right? This is, you know, it's her ex-husband, right? It's not like there's love there. And I said, you know, he runs around telling everyone he's from Eastern Europe. I said, but he's 55% Italian. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, that's what 23andMe says. And like, I could hear her jaw hit the floor.
Like you could hear her heart drop into her stomach. Like my heart just dropped into my stomach for your mom.
Exactly. And the best part is the response when she said, I thought I asked you not to take that test.
Oh. Okay. You little boy.
Is there something you want to tell me? Because at this point in time, you know, it's starting to make sense. And now everything's starting to become clear, because when I heard that drop on the other side, like she didn't actually drop the phone, but when I heard like literally that quiet, I knew, okay, the truth is actually here. And so I said that to her, and I said, is this something you want to tell me? So she proceeds to tell me that she had an affair. She was very young in the marriage, and my father was older. And as you said, as he said in his life, his work was his mistress, right? And that's something that, you know, for him was very, you know, a revelation late in life. Now, I love my dad, and I love my mom, right? So for me, this didn't change anything. I mean, it changed a bit of our relationship in one way, meaning like I just realized, wow, like she really was able to sweep that under the rug and as if it never happened, right? And then she told me she had this affair, and it was with an individual. Let's call him Bob.
He's Italian.
Well, exactly. And he's definitely Italian. And he, you know, she said it was short-lived. It was literally something she did when she was younger, and was just out of, you know, being loneliness.
Sure.
And it was also the 80s, right?
Right.
Like, you know, she never could have known that I could spit in a cup and be able to find this out. You know, the minute that the other person sneaks out the back door, it's over. No one knows anything. It's over.
Totally.
It's as if it never happened.
I mean, Facebook, so many things have changed. Yeah, nobody could know.
Exactly. So that was one of the harder conversations I've had in life, because, you know, this is someone I care about deeply, and I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around this now 40-plus-year-old secret, right? So I said, you know, does my dad know? And she said, no way. No. No one should ever know about this. And I said, I love that I'm saying that on a podcast. That is gonna go out.
I wish I was that. I wish I could like surprise you with her on the other line right now.
Sorry, I thought I was getting Eve Sturgis, not Jerry Springer.
Right, Jerry. Yeah, I guess that would be a different kind of podcast.
Yeah, that would be a different kind of podcast. A fun one though, probably to watch. So I questioned whether or not he knew, and she didn't know. And I said, well, maybe it's wrong. I'm trying to kind of give it, maybe it's wrong. And she goes, you're 99% you're your dad's son, right? 99%.
Your mom, she sounds adorable. She sounds adorable.
Oh, and you gotta respect the dedication to the lie.
Yeah.
you got or to the belief of that possible 0.01%. Afterwards I said, okay, well, I said, I don't hold you, I don't have any ill will. This is, you were young and stupid. That's just, it is what it is. Right. So, and we hung up, and, she texted me almost like right away. She's like, I'm just so sorry that you're having to deal with a mistake I made 40 years ago.
So interesting how so many moms don't come clean so quickly. I even hate the word come clean. It's like honest right away. Like
totally.
I'm very impressed that she still wants it to be a very, her secret, but she's.
Well, it's also, listen, I think that there's, I was always kind of her baby, right? I was always, and now I realize, well, maybe that's because I literally was only her baby, but I was always kind of like, very much like her. And so, we have always had like kind of an open relationship in a way where I could go to her and say things that I normally wouldn't say to other individuals, or I would be able to approach things. And so that was, I respected that, and I think she respected that. And then for her to come and apologize but in that apology, she said, I really hope you don't, that it just dies here. Right. And that's not happening.
Right.
I'm not that guy. Meanwhile, while this conversation is happening, this is all happening like within an hour of the results. I get a message on 23andMe from a first cousin. Okay, let's call her Lisa. Right? Saying, hey, I see we're first cousins. Who are you? And my reply was, if you asked me an hour ago, I would know.
Right.
Now I got no idea who the hell I am. And she wrote back saying, oh, well, I think maybe you should have a conversation with the person who showed up as my sister, or I guess it would be half sister, right? Let's call her, I don't know, throw a name out. Eve. Let's call her Eve.
Okay. Sister Eve. Okay.
Exactly. She goes, I think you should have a conversation with Eve, because on my side, it's showing you guys as half siblings. Now, word of warning to anyone who falls into one of these NPE situations. You could fall into a beehive of family dynamics that have the potential of stinging you to an anaphylactic state.
Right? Wow.
I said, well, would this be something, you would, like, are you close with her? Have you talked to her? Because literally this is all happening like split second,
right,
in the instant messaging. And she said, no, we don't speak.
Oh, God.
And I said, oh, okay. Fine. Well, I thank you so much. I will reach out to her. Right? So I sent a message, because now I realized that the cousin was shown that I exist. That means it's a matter of time before the half sister knows I exist, either through a 23andMe thing or a cousin who later I found out like there's no love lost between the two sides of the family. So, maybe it's something that would be used down the road, or maybe it's, or just gossip, whatever. At this point in time, ignorance it's not bliss, but it's ignorant. And so I sent a message to the sister, Eve. So I sent a message saying the same, kind of encompassing the response I gave to the first cousin. Hi, I'm Mendy. Sorry, like this, an hour ago I thought I knew who I was. Now I'm like just as lost as anyone else. And like saying, I hope you're doing good. I mean, this is in the heart, like the depths of COVID. So I hope you're safe. And like, I don't know, where do you want to go?
Right.
And I kind of just left it. And, I'm thinking, okay, you know what? Someone who receives that, it's going to take them some time to process. Boy, was I wrong. Within an hour, I get a message to connect from Eve. And then I'm like, oh, wow. And then so we connect, and I know that she's just checking out all of my, my vitals or whatever it is you call it, all my details, right? Oh wow, the Italian or this. And at that point in time, I'm like, wow, any minute she's either going to respond to me or this is dead, right? And like my wife at this point in time is done teaching, came downstairs and said to me like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? I told her, I said, you know what? I have to tell you, this train took off.
Yeah. Wow.
And I didn't realize, but my hand was holding onto the railing when it took off. And now I'm literally just trying to either pull myself onto the train or I'm going to jump off. I just don't know what to do. And it's Pandora's box, right? Like you're really putting everything out there. About half an hour later, I get a response from Eve saying, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I cannot believe this is happening. I am in utter like shock. You must have tons of questions. I have tons of questions. Maybe we should talk. Which I responded, oh, sorry.
Do you know how old she was at that yet?
She's younger than me. So she's about 34, 35, something like this.
Okay.
Now, and one of the funny things is that, she is like based on the portfolio, drop dead gorgeous, right? And the reason I'm saying it is that my wife made a comment saying, it's a good thing you didn't live back there because knowing you probably would have hit on her. And I'm like, oh wow, that's crazy.
I mean,
and that's scary. And it's like, you might be right.
That's
like,
Pandora's box. I mean, everything becomes possible.
Exactly. So, so she sends me this message and I'm like, okay, like 30 seconds later, I'm like, yes, this is my phone number. What's your phone number? I can call you. Yeah, I did not leave anything to the imagination. There was no chase there. I'm like, I'm yours. What do you want? I'm here. We talked for like an hour. And Eve, I could tell you, talking to Eve was like, for me, the most fulfilling conversation I've ever had.
Wow.
I had, as I said, I was always kind of the entertainer in my family. I was always the black sheep where everyone would roll their eyes at stuff I would do, my commitment to different things and passions and in some forms like obsessions, like of things that like I just can't let go of it. It's as if I took me and cloned a female version.
Wow.
That is the conversation we had, right? To the extent of like, I have always grown up with the worst irritable bowel syndrome. And if you're Jewish, you know what I mean. And I've grown up thinking to myself, I have the worst Jewish stomach that exists. Turns out It's not Jewish.
It's an Italian stomach.
And it turns out that this family has the exact same stomach problem.
Wow.
To the extent that Eve actually is on the exact same medication that I am on.
Wow.
At the exact same dosage.
Oh my gosh. It is like you met a clone.
I kid you not. And, you know, I was on just this total high. My wife is literally sitting on the bottom of the stairs. Like, we threw the kids in front of the TV. We're like, watch whatever you want. She's sitting at the bottom of the stairs. I'm like in our extra room, and I'm just sitting there talking with this person who is literally like my soulmate, right? Like, and I couldn't be happier. You know, she informed me that I also have a half brother who is younger than her. Now, and she informed me that my biological father is still alive. Okay, so Bob, Italian Bob, is also quite a ladies' man. So when him and my mom actually had created me, he was single or dating who now is maybe is their mom. It's that part's unclear right now. But he wasn't married.
Some fuzzy timeline, right?
Yeah, fuzzy timeline, exactly. He wasn't married, right? And like, you know, Eve, the half sister, kept saying, like, you know, they were young and stupid. Like, my mom and him have been divorced already for 13 years because he cheated or something like that, or he's had girlfriends over these years and he cheated on them. So, like, you know, I'm not bringing anything kind of, you know, eye-opening to them as far as you know, the father and commitment. So, you know, I think that there was she said he's a great guy. He's going to, you know, will open up his house to you when he finds out. He's like, he loves family, that sort of stuff. And my brother, he may have a bit of a difficult at one point in time, but like, you know, I'm going to call him now, but like his fiance, you know, and he's engaged. He just got engaged. So like, and it's also, let's also, you know, we have to keep remembering this is in COVID. This is like in like lockdown, at least for where I am.
Yeah.
And I think for them as well. Like, it was in lockdown, like North American lockdown. And when she, you know, when we hung up the phone, you know, we said we'll talk. She's going to call right now, call the brother and call the dad. And when we hung up the phone, I was like, I need to sleep. Like,
just exhausted. Yeah.
Totally
drained.
Like drained. And I couldn't, you know, and I went upstairs and I like literally closed my eyes for 30 minutes. And it was like, you know, my wife was on cloud nine. I was on cloud nine. You know, my wife had always said, like, I'm just so different than my family. Growing up, people always asked me, are you Italian? Because of the way I look, the way I talk with my hands. But I always thought this is just, you know, normal. I thought this is just, you know, I don't mean sign language. I mean, like, literally talking.
Yeah. You gesticulate.
Like, we're on a Zoom right now. You actually see me talking.
Yeah.
With my
hands.
And so, you know, it is as if I found my tribe.
Wow.
Right? And that's not to take away from my brothers and my sisters and my mom and my dad. I did not see that these two things have to go against each other.
Right.
I see it as it's helping me discover who I am, right? Because, you know, I've always just been content with the fact that I'm just the odd one. You know, I'm the one who can't sit in the classroom and can't go to, you know, can't do university, can't do these things, got kicked out in high school. That was me. That was who I was. And so, but everyone else is, you know, angels. After I took this little schluff, I woke up and I got a text message, and it was from the half sister. And that's why, and I said, like, she's talk. And so we talk again. And so, you know, this goes on and on for a couple of days. We ended up sliding from phone conversations into text messaging, right? which, is a very kind of 2020 thing to do, 2021 thing to do. Because why waste the time talking when you can just talk with your fingers?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we start talking, and we're just getting to know each other. Like, I'm finding out about her. Like, she works in the nonprofit sector, and I was very active in my nonprofit sector here, and she cares about environment. I care about environment, not as much as she does, but I care about environment, and it's just we both kind of have the same way of talking, and it was very, very, like, everything was just so smooth. After a couple of weeks, I realized that she's not really saying how the conversation went with the dad and the brother. So I start kind of asking, like, hey, should I reach out to them now? She said, like, leave it with me. I'll let you know when's a good time. Right? So, okay. A couple weeks go on a little bit further, and still, like, we're chatting or texting, and she's, wishing me happy Father's Day and stuff like that. But nothing's transpiring. Right? So I reach out and I say, hey, is it, can I contact them, or should I call them, or what should I do? She comes back and says, they know of you, and they don't really want a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, like, is there a reason? Like, I mean, is it whatever? No reason was really given. And at this point in time, I'm feeling her starting to distance, right? So I go on, NPE Facebook groups or whatever, and I kind of throw it to the crowd, and I say, what would what do you do in this scenario? Because contrary to popular belief, there's no handbook for any of us.
Right.
So we're going off piss and vinegar and our gut feeling. We're not following any sort of guideline. If there was a correct guideline, trust me, we would follow it, because we want a good result.
Right. We want to do the right thing.
We're not interested in hurting people or upsetting families, or, but, people are different. Everyone has different personalities, and, that this is in essence the whole picture. So I asked them, and everyone said, don't listen to, the sister. A lot of times, in my case, my sister was blocking me from reaching out because she wanted to control the situation. I mean, every scenario was thrown except for, which is probably the most likely scenario, which in my situation is, it's just shame, right? So I follow everyone's guidelines. So I put together a little envelope, and I put pictures, and I write a letter, and I send it by registered mail. And by the time it gets there, I have the work where they both work at, right? I don't have the home addresses, so I sent it to the work. I see it was signed for. I see it was signed for by Bob, so the father signed for both copies. And still nothing. Quiet. Mm-hmm. Right? And I start reaching out to the sister, and I'm not hearing it.
Oh boy.
Right? So at this point in time, I'm like, okay, I'm really craving, like, if they don't want a relationship with me, man up and say to me, you don't want a relationship. Pick up the phone, give me at least that little bit of respect and that little bit of acknowledgement that I exist. Right?
Because otherwise it's like this ambivalence without closure that is its own kind of torture that's different than an outright rejection.
Exactly. And anyone who knows me knows that I, like, unless like I hear it from you, I'm going to keep going until I hear it from you. Right? So I continued. I sent flowers to him on his birthday.
Uh-huh.
Within an hour of those being delivered, I received what I would call machine gun text messages from the half-sister who disappeared for over a month. And those were saying, what are you doing? They don't want a relationship with you. This is not respectful. Like, all of a sudden, like, it was the most volatile thing that I've ever received by text message. And so I pick up the phone. I push the call button, which my generation knows how to do, but the other generation doesn't. So I push the call button, no answer. I try again, no answer. So I send a text message saying, hey, I don't know if you could see, I'm trying to call you. At least listen to me. Nothing, no response. So I wait a day, right? Because I don't want to respond emotionally. And so eventually I text message saying, listen, I'm working from the blind spot of not knowing what the heck is going on your guys' end. You've gone quiet for a month, right? Everywhere I read, it says that I should be at least trying to connect directly with the biological father, right? And I mean, what did I do wrong? I sent someone flowers on their birthday. I didn't say from your son, like, I didn't rub someone's face in it. Still, so I sent it, no response. So it seems that at that point in time, it's done. And that was for me very, very difficult, because for someone to reject you without ever knowing you, without ever having a conversation with you, without ever meeting you or anything, it is in my eyes the most painful form of rejection, because you didn't have a chance to show who you are or be who you are. And this is something that I have still to this day struggle with. Now, meanwhile, my biological father is still around. My now I found out half brother, the brother I grew up with, is still around, right? Like, I have my mom, I have my other brothers and sisters. I have my own network of people who I love and care for.
And your birth certificate father is still.
Yeah. Exactly. So
everyone is still around. You have
everyone's still around, and everyone, I'm still there. And all of a sudden, right after this whole fiasco with Eve, Sister Eve, my half brother sends me a message saying, "Hey, what did when you told me you took 23andMe?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Did it show up 50% Ashkenazi?" I said, "Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I looked at it and I deleted it." And then he goes back. He goes, I remember like you saying somewhere that it didn't, or something like that. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it showed it. Like, at this point in time, I'm already like deep in this. I don't want to, throw my mom under the bus, right? At the same time, I also I'm not in the position where I want to be. It's not my secret to keep, right? I'm not lying for anyone else. So I pick up the phone, I call him, I said, "Why are you asking me all this? Like, what the heck is going on?" He goes, "Well, I mean, I took a 23andMe. It's showing you as my half brother." And he's like, "I'm trying to figure out if it's you or me."
Oh my God. I was afraid you were going to say that he found out he was also not Ashkenazi Jew.
Oh, no. But you know what? He may not have been from my birth certificate father. We don't know.
Right.
I mean, it's, the 1980s back east.
Right.
Country clubs, who knows what happened back there. And so I said, at this point in time, I say to him, it's me. It's me. At least that's what it looks like. I don't know. And, I'm just trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And he said to me, and this is someone who, we grew up fighting, but we were always, brothers, but our relationship had kind of gotten rocky in the last, 10 years or so. And he said to me, he goes, "I don't give a crap what the DNA says. You're my brother, no matter what." And so this was something that, I mean, every negative story has some sort of, silver lining to it. And so this has some silver linings. And it's not all negative, because even since then, periodically, messages are kind of sent through different ways through social media that make me know that the half sister really does want a relationship with me, but she can't,
right?
Because she's conflicted, and she's, they are a family unit of dad, brother, sister, and she's, for lack of better words, outvoted here,
right?
And they do not want anything. They want, it's their method of dealing with it. It's like, mine is open arms, whatever. Their method of dealing with it is literally take it, seal it up, open the drawer, put it in the drawer, lock the drawer, okay? Try to sell the desk so someone takes the desk, then leave the office, close the office, burn the building down that the office is in. That's the way in which they deal with problems.
God, it's so interesting because there's so many people that respond that way, and I would love to be able to sit down with them and find out what it is that they what's going on. Yeah, what are you afraid of? Like, let's talk this out. I would love to talk about it in depth with what, because it sounds like it might be really scary, whatever it is.
Listen, as scary as it is for them, imagine what it is for me. All right, and sorry, I meant to do that the other way. As scary as it is for me, imagine what it is for them.
Right.
Also, different generation, right? It is someone in their 70s, right? So it's shameful. And then also remember, like I said, there's family dynamics. So when I found out that it was 4 brothers and that 2 of them went one way, 2 of them went the other, one sued another, they haven't talked in 20 years, right? And so the first cousin is from one of the brothers who they sued the biological father. Like, this is all, things that, okay, a year later, hindsight's 2020, I would have done things a little bit differently, right? I would have let the train go, and eventually it would have come, and there would have been another scheduled arrival at some point in time. But that being said, I compiled a letter to send to Bob, and I sent it to the addresses. I've done all those been verified and white pages, all these other things where you try to get, at least some sort of idea of where to send something. And so I sent a letter, and it took like 3 weeks or 4 weeks because it's international. And then it came back, right? So by the time it came back, it had now been like 6 weeks from the time I sent it. And it said insufficient address. So, and I don't know. So then I sent it to the next address. And this time I sent it with where they have to sign. And someone signed for it, and it wasn't his name. But the letter pretty much said, like, listen, now I understand things are a little bit clearer, and I've been able to kind of sit down with my mom and understand a bit of the scenario. It turns out that there was a friendship between the couples later on in life that maybe made, whatever.
Makes this more complicated.
I said, now I understand it's, there's more depth and more facets to this whole thing. But I'm not writing this letter to apologize for my existence. I'm writing it to apologize if my existence has caused you any pain, or caused you any suffering, or caused anything with your relationships with your existing family members. I said, because that's not my purpose. My purpose is to find out who I am, right? Genetically, DNA wise. And if there is something that I can learn health wise, I would love to learn it. And God willing, down the road, do you want to have a relationship, right? Or the brother or the sister, or all 3 want to have some sort of relationship or contact. I'm open to it, to see where it could go, right? About a week after I sent this, my birth certificate father passed away, which made this whole thing even more, because it was almost a double grieving, right? A grieving of the rejection from this family, and now the grieving of this man. Now, the more I reflect on our relationship together, etc., the more I realize, there is a good chance he probably knew, right? And that, for me, just, that elevates him to a whole new level as a man who maybe knew, most likely knew, but chose to raise me as his own. Now, yes, there were different things. I mean, it was not a nice divorce between my mom and my dad. So there are times that as kids we were used as weapons in their fighting. And maybe that explains the tickets or the the education payments or whatever. I don't know, or dental, whatever. I've let go of all those things. For me, I look at him and I think, wow, what an amazing human being. Even though I was treated a little bit different, I grew up in a loving household to an extent, like everyone else. I was given every opportunity. I had food on my table, in my stomach. I had new clothes when I needed new clothes, new shoes when I needed new shoes. So overall, I mean, I'm better than many people in the world.
Yeah,
so
when you think about the alternatives of what a partner, a man could do.
Yep. Oh yeah, 100%. And so that raised him a whole new level. Now he passed away. It was during COVID, so I wasn't able to go for the funeral. I wasn't able to go for any of this stuff. And this is not even diving into the whole factor that I have always grown up identified as Jew and Jewish. I went to the extent of going through an Orthodox conversion, and I was in a yeshiva that was, with the idea of moving further to become a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi. So to then find out that genetically I don't have a single ounce of Jew in me, right? Of Jewish history or DNA in me. Also for myself showed that Orthodox conversion was so important for me without even realizing it. Now I hold a high position in the nonprofit sector in our Jewish community. And so this is, for me, a very, these are some of the silver linings afterwards, where there's no afterwards, because it's always going to continue. But these are some of the silver linings, and I really do hope that down the road, one day, they're able to put aside whatever it is that is causing them. I mean, I could hypothesize and come up with different ideas or different theories. But I mean, some of the first cousin, second cousin added me on Facebook one time, and then I got another one of the machine gun text messages, so I took them all off of Facebook. It just seems that there is something there that is really holding them back, and I can understand it, I can respect it, and I still periodically send a message out by text message or through social media, just saying, hey, how are you? This is what's up with the kids. This is what's up with me. Hope you're doing well. And, I send them into the abyss with the hopes that down the road, with the hopes and belief that they are being read on the other side. And, the openness for me is extremely important, and to let it, eventually fall into a place where, they may someday look back and say, this is not some crazy psycho serial killer.
Right. You're not out for their money.
Oh, geez. I actually was worried that the father would ask me for money. I'm not kidding you. Not that I'm rich, but you open up Pandora's box.
Right. Anything.
You don't know what you're going to get.
Anything can happen. Yeah.
And you read stories and you hear, on like podcasts like yours, which is just phenomenal. My wife and I listen every week together. And NPE stories with Lily Wood, and you hear all these stories and all these different ways that things can happen and how it just breaks down across. You just, you're grateful for, the people you have who are with you to support you throughout it. And you just live the process, right? And go through it and take the difficult days with the difficult days and the good days with the good days. And so I mean, I'm in a place now where, I'm not open about it in my community, right? the only two people in my family who know are my mom and my half brother, my brother, because he'd found out through the 23andMe. None of the others know, no one else. And, I think that eventually down the road that I will have that conversation, but because of all the travel restrictions and stuff like that, I'm not able to see people in person, and I'm not having it over the phone.
Right.
Because I want to hug them afterwards. I want them to know that doesn't change me. It doesn't change the way I view them and the love I have for them. It maybe changes, whether or not I listen to Italian music. My wife couldn't get over the fact that, like, all of a sudden I was ordering pizza.
I was just saying, like, there's a whole new menu available to you.
And not only that, like, I downloaded classic Italian songs and we're blasting it all over the neighborhood, and everyone's like, what the heck is going on?
What is going on over there? That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And now looking at pictures of the biological father when he was my age, and side by side, I have a hard time believing my mom when she says she didn't suspect.
She didn't know.
Right? I have a very, very hard time.
And sometimes we see what we want to see, or don't see what we don't want to see. Right.
Yeah, and that's true. Right. And sometimes, and that's a survival technique, right? Like, that's
absolutely
just how some people survive. And the same critique, let's say, that I may have of the biological family, of throwing it in a drawer and locking it away, is the same survival technique that my mother used for 40 years. She put it in the drawer and locked it away, out of sight, out of mind.
Totally.
So that's my story up until now. But it's
still happening.
Friday. It's only Friday.
So,
who knows what tomorrow brings?
The world is unfolding.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and it's. I really would, if there was even an opening, I would fly there to sit down and have a conversation. And if it's the only conversation we ever have, then that's fine, right? I just the unknown, the complete shutdown or blocking, and I can't do that. For me, that's very difficult. If they sat down and talked to me for 5 minutes,
right,
they would realize I have absolutely no desire whatsoever to go after money, to go after anything, or to replace anybody. It's literally just to learn. And if a great relationship comes of it, great. Like, that's awesome. But
learn, do you feel like to learn? Yes, like I 100%, I'm with you there. And do you also feel like there's something to be said about being able to look at this other person or these other people that not only have had this happen, but you guys have this like genetic, you guys are in this genetic connection, like the experience is genetic. So there's also this desire to just look at someone else and say, like, this is really wild, right? And they would say, this is really wild. Like, there's no one else can understand the level of what you're going through, this sort of, we don't have the words for it, experience, except the other people. Like, they're the only people, they're having it because of you, and you're having it because of them. And there's no one else you can look in the eyes and say that to. Yeah.
And I'm really blessed, like many of MPEs, to have a loving and supportive partner. And even my partner says to me multiple times, I'm sorry if I've said, but you are who you are, or, like something like that. Because she said now, and it's thanks to people like you, Eve. Seriously, it's thanks to people like you, because she hears it in these podcasts and in these stories of all my fellow MPEers, that there is no one who understands. Nobody can get it. except for the people who have lived through
Who have lived it. Yeah.
And I, the opportunity, I would love to sit across the table from them and say, this is crazy, right? Yeah. I think that the sister would be like, yeah, it totally is, because we have the same kind of personality. Him, I got no idea. I know nothing about him. The only thing I know about him is he is literally like, I tried sending a message on Facebook and a friend request, and then she came back with another machine gun text message, right? So like, I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure of it. I'm sure he's just scared. Big life things are going on. He's engaged. COVID.
Oh yeah. Then they're worried. This is all about being worried about inviting you to a wedding. Oh.
Well, I you know what? I'll send them a letter telling them that there's no way I want to come to it.
Right. No, but maybe this is all the fiance being like, we've already ordered the plates. Like, we cannot have another.
So the one thing is
like, not one more guest.
The fiance seems to be also pretty cool as well. I think it is the two men. I think that there is, and this is something that I have learned, that sometimes in Italian culture we can be stubborn, us men, not just in every other culture, but also in Italian. And so I think that there is a concern that this can be used against the father in a fight, and there's so many different things here. And the problem is that by not communicating, I hypothesize and come up with different scenarios, and then I'm like, oh, so then I'll try this, or oh, if that's the case, I'll do this. Like,
probably, most likely. The reasons are very mundane. Probably. I think most of us feel like, or in most NPEs, right? But because there's nothing, you have no choice but to think of everything.
Exactly.
Think of everything.
My point, and this goes to any of you who listen, who are on the other side, who are the family, right? Is engage with the NPE or the MPE, because by engaging, it's going to stop any wave of continuation if it's something that's not going to go anywhere. By not engaging, and I don't mean engage by sending a cease and desist letter. If I got a cease and desist letter from him, I don't want to tell you what I would do, because it's ridiculous. Engaging, okay, so you got this 22, no problem. Let's have a conversation. Let's be adults about this.
Right.
Let's have an adult sitting at the table, and sit down and say, okay, can we approach this let's see how this can work. Oh, you want a relationship? That's going to be problematic for me because I've remarried and I have other kids. I see the scare on their end because they don't know who they're opening the door to.
I wish there was. I mean, I think this is a society problem more than an NPE problem. But if we could talk more about what we're scared of, maybe everybody could approach one another with a little more sensitivity.
Well, geez, I think if we could just talk more, period, to people, and like have open conversations about everything, not just NPE,
right,
about life and food and everything. I think that we can have, we would have a way better society. Let's just put our phones down for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I think that there is, by the way, in my opinion, a market for a middle an organization that works in the middle, similar to like in adoption, where you send the letter and then that person reaches out and says, I'm from this organization. This has been, and at least then there would be maybe a uniformed approach to one side, and would also allow kind of I don't want to say an unemotional, but someone who is not emotionally attached,
like a neutral ambassador.
Yes, exactly.
Could help with with in the adoption world, I believe it's called reunification.
Yes.
Something about, I was just thinking that like there needs to be a kind of a script or a protocol that's like, these are the things you want to know, these are the things you want to know. Like, is there a way to come together?
And this is something that, it could also could provide a conduit for, those families to, who maybe are not interested in having a relationship, to at least express it to an individual. And that individual can come to the NPE and say, like, I mean, in my case, a half sister, it was expressed to the half sister, and she expressed it to me.
Right.
But the problem is that there is a history of blocking by siblings of there is a history here. By having that ambassadorship or whatever it is, having that third party, it kind of takes that away, right? And and they can even encourage, saying, listen, even writing a letter, right? And this can provide closure for these people. I mean, it's an idea. I don't know. I may be wrong.
No, I think we should keep talking about it. I mean, off the air, I think you're right. I mean, I think there's so many opportunities because that's what people want. We want, and I think all people really appreciate containers, right? Like container structure, protocol. And I don't mean that it needs to be militaristic, but routine, ritual, those are things that feel really good to people, us as people. There's a safety in that. And
I think people trust organizations, right? Like if it's a nonprofit organization, something like that, like they'll be like, oh, this actually is probably real, right? Like this isn't just some random kook reaching out to me through a Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, and even at the very least, I'm also wondering. You have me thinking a lot also about just mentorship of some kind, like. If more, I know that the Facebook groups and the support networks are trying to provide that in a sort of grand scheme, but I wonder how it would feel if you, as an NPE, in any element of the situation, if there was someone you could be connected with one-on-one to help you through the,
This is something I think this is something that there's an organization, Right to Know.
Yeah.
And I think that this is something that would fit really nicely into their umbrella, because I believe they have a hotline or something like that for MPDs. Right?
Oh yeah, I'll look into that. I'll look into that and post whatever I can find when I post your episode. Because you're right. Yeah, Right to Know is probably I'm connected with them. So okay, this is good. But I'm so interested in your. It's interesting to me. We didn't talk about it very much, but your experience with your faith.
We could talk about it if you want. And you can cut and paste or whatever.
And your identity. And
that was definitely a challenge, right? Because I went from someone who was very very deep into the Jewish religion to this no genetic connection. Now, Judaism is a religion that doesn't have to have a genetic connection if you've converted. So I actually had converted, and I converted to the highest authority as far as denominationally, right? And so for me, I already identified at that level and always have, and it was never connected to to my genetic upbringing,
your bloodline.
Exactly.
Right.
But now that doesn't change the fact that it definitely shakes you to your kishkas. Like it gets in your system, and it's you start thinking, oh wow, like oh my gosh. But I'm one of the, I guess I would say, one of the lucky ones who would go from such a drastic change of genetic faith to have really rooted and be deeply rooted in where I am and who I am and what my belief is before, during, and after. Now, culturally, which culturally also I'm very rooted, but I've just like when it comes to the family, I'm not letting go of one for another.
Right.
I'm just adding. Right. So I'm adding this into my cultural attaché. And I definitely I have never had any desire whatsoever to go to Italy before. Oh yeah, no, I'm going. Right. And my wife, there's always now the joke, and now everywhere I turn, there's something popping up Italian or popping. Italy just won the Euro soccer match. My wife is visiting family, and she's in the neighborhood. She's staying is Little Italy, and they're going
the signs
crazy.
were everywhere. They were everywhere all along.
Right now. Yeah, of course, it's everywhere. And so, I mean, for me, it's more of adopting and bringing it under the tent versus losing anything. I have not. If anything, it's just shown me how solid I feel and am in where I am and where my family is. That being said, like, I'm so interested to learn more, right? Like, interested to learn about like their faith, or to what extent they have. I mean, I believe they're Catholic, and so to learn more about that, right? But also remember, I told you my mom converted, so
right.
I already have that from that family growing up. So I have that kind of like openness and understanding between there.
The fluidity, so, yeah.
And I mean, it definitely shakes you a bit. But my shaking was more along the lines of like, well, I can't even say I was so shooken, because the train took off way too quick.
It was faster than you could, right?
I didn't have time to really process. And now I'm a year after, and okay, now I'm processing. And like, some people, it takes them years, multiple years to process. It may take the other side multiple years to process and accept, right? I definitely sent a text message to the half brother and half sister on NPE Awareness Day, June 27th, right? Just saying like, hey, I know this hasn't been a great experience for you guys, and not really the greatest for me, but I'm grateful for at least knowing who I am or where I come from. Right. So, I mean, for me, I'm still going down the path. My wife has gotten to a place where she like gets frustrated and is like mad that they are like not even engaging, to the extent where she's like, they're so stupid. They're missing out on like the most amazing human being. That's my wife speaking. Okay? That's my wife speaking. So, she gets mad, but for me, it's like I get frustrated or upset or hurt, but my overall philosophy is arms wide open.
Right.
Well,
you're not holding a grudge.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, like, if right now, if as we're speaking, I got a text message from, the half brother or the biological father or the half sister or whatever, or their dog, that would be amazing if I got a dog. But if I got it, I would in a second pick it up, look at it, read it. But the difference is now I would take an hour to process to make sure I don't respond too quickly and upset some, because now I'm a little more conscious of their side and whatever shenanigans or whatever's going on their side. Right?
Yeah, no way to know.
This is something where that mentorship, mentorship could be really helpful. Right? Well, this has been very therapeutic and fun.
Oh, good. Good.
I've actually enjoyed it immensely.
Oh, good.
It's nice my wife actually she recorded my story, because she's like, you're going to forget all of this. So she recorded it, and it's on like, I don't know where she like did like a voice recording. And it's like 2 hours long, so much detail. And I just said to her, I said, who the heck's going to listen to that?
You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed. People need to hear these things. So yeah, good. I'm glad she saved that. Oral histories are important.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I will be in touch with you.
Okay. Awesome. This is exciting.
If anything, comes up, contact me. I know I must be getting better from my stomach flu, because now I'm craving pizza, since Mendy talked about ordering it all the time now that he's Italian. We're not Italian, but we eat a lot of pizza in this house. I think families with a lot of kids eat a lot of pizza. Yeah, that's a thing, right? Who cares? That's a different podcast, the Pizza Podcast. Go find it. Anyway, special thanks to Mendy for being a champ and telling his story and also being so honest about his experience. These aren't graceful. And I think that the more that people share all the parts of their NPE experience, the graceful and the not so graceful, then the more shame is lifted all around. And that's how community is created, and that's how healing can happen. Also, you know how Mendy was talking about an ambassadorship or a mentorship for NPEs? So he was right. The organization called Right to Know does offer the resource on their website of like a mentorship, or they'll help connect you. So I put it up on my Instagram. Go see the information there, or look it up at righttoknow.us. And if this all felt too overwhelming, you can also reach out to me, and I will try and help connect you to the right people. So shoot me an email, eve@everythingsrelativepodcast.com. You can also shoot me an email if you want to tell a story, you want to tell me anything. If you want to complain or you have some ideas, send me a note. That's it for this week, everyone. Thank you for coming along. Stay in touch all week with on the social media. We're at Everything's Relative Podcast. Make sure you're subscribed. Check out our Patreon. Rate and review. Share with all your friends. And don't forget to eat your veggies. I'm Eve Sturgis. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis is produced by Kaylin Egan and Eve Sturgis. Eve is a licensed therapist in the state of California, but conversations on this podcast are not therapy sessions. This podcast is edited by Stephanie DeLon-Zick, the logo design is by Ivy McNally, and the music is used with permission by Goodbye the Band.
Have you ever encountered an unexplained hairy bipedal hominid in the woods?
Have you received telepathic messages from an unidentified aerial phenomenon?
If so, then you need to listen to Bigfoot Collectors Club. I'm Michael McMillan.
And I'm Bryce Johnson.
And together with super producer
Riley Bray,
we make up the Bigfoot Collectors Club.
That's right. Every week we talk to actors, comedians, writers, and paranormal experts about their personal paranormal histories and share stories of high strangeness.
Like the time when we talked to Craig Ferguson about the Loch Ness Monster and when a sea witch told him he had raven magic.
Or the time I asked Pitch Perfect's Anna Camp her opinion on cattle mutilations. Past guests have included Rachel Bloom, Jen Kirkman, Paul F. Tompkins, Bobcat Goldthwait, and more.
So if you've ever been abducted alongside 5 reindeer by an alien with drills for hands, or witnessed Bigfoot crawl out of an interdimensional portal,
don't laugh, happens all the time.
Then check out Bigfoot Collectors Club on Campfire Media or wherever you get your podcasts.
Bigfoot Collectors Club. You're here to believe us.
Wait, is that how it goes?
Campfire.